It was the second year since I had been trafficked into the mountains. On the way to search for me, my husband fell in love with the female reporter covering the case. My daughter changed her tune and started calling that reporter Mom. On the very day they held their wedding, I was tortured to death in a dilapidated shack. When I opened my eyes again, I heard my husband's gentle voice. Yuan, let's go to Qishan together for volunteer teaching. The blood in my veins froze. I stared in disbelief at my perfectly intact hands and feet. In my past life, my palms and ankles had been pierced with iron chains, bloodily pinned to a hidden wooden stake. The nightmare-like memories rushed in like a tidal wave, breaking me out into a cold sweat. My husband was still droning on beside me. You know I'm up for the senior professional title this year. And my resume is still missing a little something. The school happens to be organizing a volunteer teaching trip to Qishan, and they're short on a Chinese teacher. The leadership asked me to see if you'd be willing to go with me. In my past life, it was precisely this opportunity that lured me into that devil's den. You had repeatedly egged me on to join him, saying how pitiful the children there were, how no new teacher had gone there for years, and how the 6th graders couldn't even figure out addition and subtraction within 100. The director said as long as you're willing to go, my title is a guaranteed lock. Yuan, you'll help me, right? I slowly set down the things in my hands and spoke calmly. I'm sorry. I can't go. You froze. Why? Didn't you say last year that you would help me with the professional title? Setting down the shirt I was halfway through folding, I turned around to question him. Did I not help you? Last year, there was only one slot for the entire grade level, and I gave it up to you. But didn't you fail to get it anyway? My icy tone took him aback. You instantly flared up in anger and embarrassment. What is that supposed to mean? My failure last year was definitely due to some internal corruption. But this year is different. Going on this volunteer teaching trip grants bonus points, and if we go as a couple, we get an extra point. Are you really refusing to help me? No matter how I folded it, the shirt just wouldn't sit right. The crease at the collar felt unsoothing, like a permanent scar. I threw the shirt fiercely into the closet and said coldly, I've helped you more than enough. If your own ability is the problem, don't blame others. With that, I walked out. Our daughter was watching TV, thoroughly engrossed in a boring soap opera. Normally, I would have urged her to hurry up and study, but today I simply walked past her without saying a word. Entering the study, I heard you complaining to our daughter outside. I think your mom has truly lost her mind. She's becoming impossible to talk to. My daughter chimed in. Probably menopause. Just leave her alone. Let's go out for barbecue. Seething with anger, You readily agreed. The father and daughter didn't return until midnight. You was drunk, stumbling into the bedroom stinking of alcohol. He didn't wash up or brush his teeth, and the pungent odor jarred me awake. I didn't say a single word. I just grabbed my pillow and blanket and went to sleep in the study. The next morning, because you was hungover and lacked my wake-up service, he ended up arriving late for work. The director said displeasedly, the people from the Bureau of Education are inspecting our grade level these 2 days. How could you make such a low-level mistake? The students' morning reading has already started. You apologized immediately. I'm sorry. Director, it won't happen again. The director glanced at him. What are you wearing? Your shirt is all wrinkled. Pay more attention next time. Of course it was wrinkled. I hadn't ironed it for him. When you returned to the office after the morning reading session, he glared at me. Yuan, you did that on purpose, didn't you? Why didn't you wake me up this morning? I kept my head down, grading assignments, and replied without looking up. Teacher Zhou, please do not discuss personal matters during working hours. He snatched the pen right out of my hand. If you have a problem with me, just say it out loud. Is this because of the volunteer teaching? How can you be so devoid of compassion? The children in those impoverished areas are starving for knowledge. As a teacher, shouldn't you do everything in your power? And there it was, the moral kidnapping. In my past life, I had seen those so-called knowledge-starved children. Those very children were the ones who blew the whistle when I tried to escape, calling the adults to drag me back. I had taught them there for half a year, using my own salary to buy them school supplies and snacks. And I had even planned to sponsor 2 of them through school. But what did I get in return? Utter ingratitude. Not going for volunteer teaching means having no compassion. Then none of the other teachers in this office have gone either. Are you saying they all lack compassion? We shared a combined office space. Hearing this, the other teachers turned their heads to look at us. Some of the older, veteran teachers who had worked easy, relaxed jobs their entire lives teaching non-core moral education classes instantly found their expressions hardening. Realizing he had misspoken, Yu immediately tried to salvage the situation. I didn't mean it that way. I just mean, as teachers, we should hold high ideals. Volunteer teaching is also beneficial for career development. I smiled faintly and lightly smoothed out the wrinkles on his shirt. High ideals, you can keep them for yourself. I don't have such lofty goals. As soon as I finished speaking, the class bell rang. I picked up my lesson plans and left. Right after completing my first Chinese class, I received a phone call from my mother. On the other end, she berated me relentlessly. Yuan, what is wrong with you? This is such a critical time for Yu's title evaluation, and you're pulling the rug out from under him. Don't you know that a man's career is the most important thing? If he gets the senior title, it reflects well on you too. Is it really that hard for you to make this tiny sacrifice? Ever since I got married, my mother had treated Yu entirely like her own son, constantly keeping one phrase on her lips. I couldn't give birth to a son when I was young, but now that I have a son-in-law, the neighbors won't look down on me. My son-in-law is a teacher. She forgot that her daughter was a teacher too. Yet, I had never heard a single word of pride about me leave her mouth. Seeing that I remained silent, my mother rambled on. Asking you to volunteer teach isn't going to kill you. What's so hard about it? I think you're just greedy for comfort. I replied coldly. Mom, what if going there really would cost me my life? Confronted with this hypothetical question, she suddenly became agitated. So many teachers go for volunteer teaching, and you're the only one claiming it'll kill you. Yuan, how did I raise you? A household can only stand firm if its pillar is strong. Yu is your husband. Of course you should support him with all your heart and soul. Listening to this archaic, feudal rhetoric, I only wanted to laugh. I didn't bother arguing back and hung up the phone. When I got home after work that evening, Yu was out drinking with his buddies. My daughter was lounging on the sofa with her legs crossed, eating potato chips. She demanded as soon as she saw me, Mom, I want sweet and sour pork ribs for dinner tonight. Go cook it. There are no ribs at home. My daughter glared at me. Can't you just go out and buy some? I walked into the study and started reviewing materials. Having just taken over a senior high school class, I needed to be fully prepared. I locked the study door from the inside, and my daughter began pounding furiously on it from the outside. Mom, are you trying to starve me to death? Hurry up and make dinner. Order delivery or eat out. I'm exhausted today and don't want to cook. My daughter kicked the door violently. If you don't cook, I'm telling Dad. Suit yourself. Yu was currently drinking himself into oblivion with his low-life friends. He had no time to worry about his daughter. Over the next few days, I minded only my own business. I completely abandoned all household chores, laundry, sweeping, cooking. The moment I got home from work, I immersed myself in researching lesson plans, pouring my heart and soul entirely into this batch of graduating high school seniors. When the results of the first mock exam came out, my class ranked first across all 4 subjects in the school-wide unified examination. After giving me the silent treatment for a while, Yu began lobbying me to volunteer teach again. He even managed to persuade the director to come and convince me. Teacher Shin, you see, we really are short-handed for this volunteer teaching trip. Since you and Teacher Zhou are a couple, you two are the most suitable. Why don't you reconsider? I set down the exam papers in my hands and said with a smile, Director, do you know how many students I have successfully sent to Tsinghua and Peking University in my past graduating classes? The director looked uneasy. And you know our class ranked first again in this semester's mock exam. Even if I wanted to leave, my students wouldn't want to let me go, right? The director muttered sheepishly. That's true. You really are excellent at leading students. I stood up and walked over to the director's side. The director might not know this, but the father of one of the students in my class works at the Bureau of Education. Before the classes were tracked for senior year, he pulled strings specifically to get his kid into my class. That child won't listen to a word his own family says. But he listens to me perfectly. I feigned a look of dilemma. Everyone was kept in the dark about this because we didn't want to make a scene. But if I leave, that kid will run wild, and no one will be able to handle him. The director's furrowed brow suddenly relaxed, and he immediately said, the senior class is indeed vital. Teacher Shin, you should stay at the school. I will figure out another way for the volunteer teaching trip. Half a month later, the director managed to drag in another scapegoat from somewhere to complete the volunteer teaching team. After holding a mobilization meeting, the group was sent off to Qishan. Before they left, I looked at the roster. There were 4 male teachers and 1 female teacher. I took the initiative to send a text message to that female teacher, reminding her to stay safe. To my surprise, less than a week after the volunteer teaching team arrived, an incident occurred. That day, I was still conducting a class when I walked past the office and heard the director on the phone. How could such a thing happen? Have you called the police? The voice on the other end was intermittent, but I could tell it was Zhou because he was the leader of this volunteer teaching trip. The director's brow was heavily furrowed. Catching sight of me, his expression turned awkward. He gave a light cough. If things have gotten that severe, you should pause the teaching and come back for the time being. No way. The person on the other end flatly refused. Director, if we come back now, it will impact my title evaluation. Director, once I secure that senior title, you will definitely get your share of benefits. Those 2 sentences cut clearly into my ears. I remembered the very first harrowing ordeal I encountered in that mountain village during my past life. It happened in the dilapidated faculty dormitory, where I was peeped at while showering by an old village bachelor. When the matter was brought before the village committee chief, the response received was actually, these old bachelors have never managed to marry a wife their whole lives, so peeping at women is their only hobby, which the village tacitly allows. Otherwise, if they have nowhere to vent their urges, the village becomes even harder to manage. I still remembered the village chief's indifferent eyes and tone back then. You're not some untouched young maiden anymore. What's the big deal if someone takes a couple of looks? The old men in our village have never seen a city woman. They're just looking for some novelty. That night, I had furiously wanted to pack my bags and leave. But Zhou kept begging me to bear with it for the sake of his title. And so, I endured. Looking back now, that must have been the very first warning sign thrown by fate. I quickly dialed the number of the female teacher on the trip to ask about the situation. The signal in the mountains was poor, making the audio choppy, and it took a long time to get the details straight. Sun Yan told me, still visibly shaken, that a student had come to class yesterday covered in injuries. Out of concern, she decided to conduct a home visit. But she nearly got detained in the village and couldn't get out. Fortunately, she had remembered my warning before setting off. So she had carried a knife with her for self-defense during the visit. The student had even tried to get her to come back to his house again the next day. Sun Yan sounded terrified over the phone. Sister Yuan, what do you think I should do now? End the teaching and come back immediately. But the director doesn't agree. And teacher Zhou also says we can't give up halfway. Yan, listen to me. Nothing is more important than your personal safety. Right now, you need to quickly. Before I could finish, Zhou's voice echoed from the other end, urging Sun Yan to go to class. She said apologetically, Sister Yuan, I can't talk right now. I have to go to class. With that, she hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone for a moment, and ultimately let out a quiet sigh. When I returned home in the evening, I found my daughter's backpack sitting in the exact same spot it had been in the morning. while she sat on the sofa watching a variety show. "You didn't go to school," Joe Kiki replied with utter nonchalance. "I got into a fight with that old geezer yesterday. I didn't feel like going today." The old geezer she referred to was her homeroom teacher. Since entering her 3rd year of junior high, her relationship with her new homeroom teacher had been terrible. I had mediated several times. Every time Joe Kiki caused trouble, I had to swallow my pride and go to the school to apologize like a servant. This time, I didn't say a single word. I ordered a food delivery for her and went into the study to work. Joe Kiki watched the variety show until midnight, her roaring laughter bursting through the door. During this period, I relaxed my discipline over her to the absolute limit. I no longer spent any thought or energy on her, whether it was her studies or her lifestyle. I checked out completely. Because whenever I recalled how I suffered agonizing abuse in the mountains while she didn't show an ounce of sorrow, instead comfortably calling another woman mom, a wave of profound disgust would wash over my heart. The child I carried for 10 months and raised with my own hands harbored an inexplicable resentment toward me, perhaps because my previous discipline had been too strict, compounded by Joe you constantly undermining me. My relationship with Joe Kiki had grown progressively rigid. The next day, Joe Kiki skipped school again. Her homeroom teacher called me, requesting that I come down to the school. "I'm sorry, teacher, but I'm currently leading a senior high class and simply cannot walk away." Joe Kiki's homeroom teacher was highly displeased. "Kiki's mom, you're a teacher yourself. How can you fail to raise your own daughter properly?" I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. In my past life, everyone interrogated me with this exact question. Even Joe, you found it bizarre how could I teach a top-tier class that ranked among the best in the school, yet fail so miserably with my own daughter. The homeroom teacher's tone was awful over the phone. "If Joe Kiki doesn't show up today, she shouldn't bother coming back at all." With that, the line went dead. After a brief internal struggle, I decided to help Joe Kiki one last time, taking half a day off. I took her to the school to apologize to the teacher. Along the way, she kept cursing and grumbling. "That bald idiot just loves to pick fights. So annoying." I couldn't resist correcting her. "Show some respect to your teacher." She shot me a cold, venomous look and spat. "It's exactly because you're always like this that Dad doesn't like you. Auntie Goo is way softer and more gentle than you." Auntie Goo? Who is that? A name suddenly flashed through my mind. Goo Yu. She was the reporter who had taken the risk to report on the news when I was imprisoned in that small mountain village in my past life. I hadn't expected her name to surface so much earlier this time around. Realizing she had slipped up, Joe Kiki quickly covered. "Stop asking. Talking about it just makes you unhappy anyway. What's the point?" Standing frozen in place. It suddenly clicked why my daughter had been able to switch to calling Guiwa mom so easily after my death in my past life. Because they had already known each other. How laughable. I was only realizing it now. Joe Kiki's homeroom teacher was droning on, scolding my daughter. My body felt entirely cold, and I couldn't utter a word. "Kiki's mom, you really need to pay attention to your child's psychological issues. If this goes on, I genuinely won't be able to keep her in my class." Snapping out of it, I said calmly, "If you can't keep her, then let her drop out." Both of them froze. Joe Kiki looked at me in shock. "Are you seriously trying to deny me an education?" I said grimly. "Weren't you making all this trouble precisely to achieve that?" Joe Kiki said viciously. "Auntie Goo already told me that I'm pretty. In the future, she can just snap her fingers to get me into the TV station to be a host. What's the point of studying? Am I supposed to end up like you, working myself to death just to be a measly teacher?" My heart turned entirely cold. It turned out she despised my profession to such an extent. "Fine. Since you don't want to study, I won't lift a finger to manage you from this day forward." Leaving those words behind, I turned around and walked out. Returning home, I packed a few things and moved into the faculty dormitory. From that day on, I truly stopped meddling in Joe Kiki's life. Joe, you called to berate me, and my mother even stormed into the school to scream at me, but I remained entirely unmoved. Husband, daughter, Mother, every single one of them viewed me as nothing more than a functional tool. I had always prioritized others' desires over my own needs, causing everyone to take me for granted as a matter of course. But who remembered that I was once a teacher who had won the Outstanding Teacher Award for 3 consecutive years, leading countless senior high classes to top-tier university admission rates? I still worried about Sun Yan. So I kept in touch by messaging her every day, until Friday arrived, and Sun Yan didn't send her daily check-in. When I called her, the phone went unanswered. Sensing that something was terribly wrong, I called Zhou Yu. To my surprise, he flatly denied any issues. Everything is perfectly fine on my end. Focus your energy on your daughter and stop sticking your nose into everything else. With that, he hung up. I couldn't get through to Sun Yan's phone. It had already been turned off. With no time to lose, I made a decisive move and called the police. Remembering how I had been tossed into that freezing pigsty in my past life, that suffocating sensation of utter despair, I refused to let another woman endure the same fate. To my surprise, less than 2 hours after I filed the police report, Zhou Yu's interrogative phone call came tracing back. Yuan, are you intentionally trying to ruin my life? What do you gain by sabotaging my volunteer teaching? Where is Sun Yan? She's perfectly fine. Of course. You made a mountain out of a molehill and drew the police right to us. The perfectly fine Zhou Yu spoke of was, in reality, Sun Yan having already been lured to another mountaintop. Her hair had been shaved off. She had been drugged, and she was completely unconscious when she was finally located. 2 villagers were literally standing at the door haggling over her price. One family was willing to pay an extra 2,000 yuan to take her away, while the other insisted they had spotted her first and refused to budge. They didn't view a woman as a human being at all. They treated her like merchandise, refusing to yield an inch. Fortunately, because I had reported it promptly, the police acted swiftly across jurisdictions upon arrival and rescued her. Consequently, the entire volunteer teaching program was brought to an immediate halt. The higher-ups issued a document criticizing the director for failing to protect the personal safety of the female teacher, stating that the entire teaching team needed to undergo self-reflection. In particular, Zhou Yu, who had led the team, saw his senior professional title evaluation for the year go completely down the drain. Upon his return, he confronted me in a blind rage, demanding to know why I had called the police. I could have resolved this matter myself. You went ahead and reported it out of nowhere, causing me to be publicly reprimanded across the entire bureau. Are you happy now? I raised my eyes to look at him, suddenly realizing that during the golden 24 hours after my disappearance in my past life, he must have similarly chosen not to call the police. That was what caused me to be trapped in that mountain, ultimately meeting a brutal death, because he chose his own future. He hadn't given a damn about whether I lived or died. Even his subsequent multiple trips into the deep mountains to search for his missing wife were merely stunts for media coverage. The devoted husband persona he manufactured was nothing but a scam from start to finish. Thinking of this, a chill of profound horror shot through me. In my past life, that female reporter had shot to fame after covering my case, ultimately becoming a renowned TV host. She feasted on the tragedy of my life, reaping every ounce of benefit. Meanwhile, before my bones had even grown cold, Zhou Yu remarried his new flame, and my daughter changed her tune to call another woman mom. Sacrifice yields no rewards. The sacrifices of the weak only invite the entitled consumption of others. Even if I laid down my life, nobody would truly care. Zhou Yu, you really are a beast. What did you say? I stood up, walked over to him, and repeated each word deliberately. Zhou Yu, you really are a beast, leaving the astonished looks of everyone else behind. I walked straight out of the office. In the afternoon, I took time off to visit Sun Yan at the hospital. Since being brought back, her emotional state had been extremely fragile. She would occasionally experience nightmares in the middle of the night, waking up screaming. Consequently, her family had admitted her to the psychiatric ward for treatment. When I arrived, she was staring blankly out the window. She snapped out of it slightly upon seeing me. Sister Yuan, are you feeling any better? Yan. She gripped my hand tightly and shook her head gently. No. I still can't shake it off. The director and the others told me not to speak recklessly, saying it wouldn't be good if too many people found out about this. I knew that many media outlets were currently paying attention to this news, but they always preferred to train their lenses strictly on the victim's perspective. Sun Yan hadn't been out of university for long. Psychologically, she was still a student, completely unguarded against many things. According to Sun Yan herself, the trigger for the incident that day was simple to a horrifying degree. It was merely because a female student in her volunteer class had missed school for 2 consecutive days. Sun Yan was a pure-hearted girl who had just stepped out of the ivory tower, her mind filled with nothing but the passion to educate. That day, after the morning self-study session, she stared at the empty seat in a daze, pulling aside another student from the same village to ask around. That student's eyes darted around shiftily, and after stammering for a long time, lowered their voice to tell her that the female student had been locked up by her family. Her father had accepted bride price from a bachelor on the neighboring mountaintop and was forcing her to marry. Hearing this, Sun Yan's brain instantly went into a buzz, all the blood rushing to her head. Where had she ever seen such a situation? The deeply entrenched feudal customs and clan darkness of rural villages were nothing more than black and white text in news reports to her. She immediately grew frantic with worry, not even bothering to pack up her lesson plans. The moment the morning classes ended, she rushed off toward the female student's home based on her memory. But how could she have known that this wasn't some family tragedy born of favoring boys over girls at all? It was an absolute trap, emitting a foul stench, tailor-made specifically for her. Inside that seemingly peaceful farmhouse courtyard, what awaited her wasn't a weeping student crying out for help. After Sun Yan entered the door, she did find the female student. The girl kept her head low, not daring to meet her eyes, silently handing her a cup of hot tea. Having run all the way there, Sun Yan was parched. She accepted it without a shred of suspicion and drank it down. Within 10 minutes, the drug took effect. She felt her head spinning, the world before her eyes distorting and rotating, her limbs growing so weak that she couldn't summon a shred of strength. Before completely losing consciousness, she faintly saw several burly men from the village push open the door and walk in, wearing greasy, greedy grins. The terrain of Qishan was treacherous mountains connected to mountains, valleys nested within valleys. Between the layers of ridges, dense primary forests blocked out the sun, unless one was a local born and raised there. An outsider stepping in would completely lose their bearings, making it incredibly easy to get lost in the deep woods and eventually turn into a skeleton. Those beasts from the village took advantage of the cover of night to stuff the unconscious Sun Yan into a back basket, following a rarely trodden ridge path. They took a shortcut to bring her to another mountaintop. They had set a high price, preparing to sell this fair-skinned city schoolteacher to the most vicious old bachelor on that peak. On the hospital bed, Sun Yan clutched my hand with a death grip, her fingernails nearly dug into my flesh, her body trembling uncontrollably, her eyes filled with the lingering terror of a survivor. Sister Yuan, though I couldn't move at the time. My hearing actually recovered for a minute or two. Lying on that freezing floor, I heard those men counting money under the oil lamp. They said they were going to sell me to a pair of biological brothers. They wanted me to be a shared wife for both brothers, to bear children and carry on their family line. It was too terrifying, truly too terrifying. If it weren't for you. Looking at her face, which was as white as paper, a dense, sharp pang pierced my heart. In my past life, I had been destroyed in the exact same manner. No, I was even more wretched. I had been tortured in that dark, subterranean cellar for 3 whole years, until I was reduced to a walking corpse devoid of a soul. Taking a deep breath, I lightly patted her back and drew her into my embrace to comfort her. It's over now, Yan. It's over. You're out now. This is the county hospital. There are police and doctors everywhere. Everything will be fine. Trust me. She broke down sobbing, tightly clutching my sleeve, her tears soaking through the cotton hospital gown. If you hadn't called the police, if the police hadn't come so fast, I don't even know how long I would have had to stay in that hellhole. Would my entire life have been ruined? I stroked her hair and remained silent. My gaze drifted past the hospital window, landing on the overcast sky outside. I knew perfectly well in my heart that if I had been even an hour late, if Shoyu's stalling tactics had succeeded just a little bit more, Sun Yen would have been taken deep into the absolute heart of the mountains. After visiting Sun Yen, I dragged my exhausted body back home. The moment I pushed open the door, the cold air and suffocating atmosphere inside hit me squarely in the face. The main lights in the living room weren't on. Only a dim floor lamp cast a yellowish glow. My mother, Zhou Yu, and my high school-aged daughter Zhou Kiki were sitting side by side on the leather sofa. Their postures were strikingly identical, arms crossed, chins tilted slightly upward, faces wearing the exact same look of coldness and fury. That united front made it seem as though I wasn't the mistress of this house, but rather a traitor who had wronged the entire family. My mother was the first to launch an attack. She slammed her hand hard against the coffee table, rattling the glass cups on top. Standing up, she pointed her finger directly at my nose and interrogated me coldly. Yuan, you must give me an explanation today. I truly don't know what on earth has been going on inside your head lately. Acting all mysterious and soul-shattered all day long. You don't care about your daughter at all. Kiki is about to take the art exam for senior high. Have you asked a single question about it? You don't offer a shred of support for your husband's career either. Who did Zhou Yu work so hard volunteer teaching for? It was all for this family. Now look what you've done with your reporting to the police and throwing a tantrum. Zhou Yu's senior title evaluation slot was pulled directly by the school. Look at the mess you've made. The more my mother spoke, the angrier she became, her chest heaving violently as she started spouting reckless words. I really should find a spiritual medium to come check you out at home. Did you catch something unclean at school? Did you get possessed or have a stroke? You'd go so far as to harm your own husband. Zhou Yu sat to the side, glaring at me coldly. Those eyes that usually looked so sanctimonious on the lecture podium were now filled with a tangible malice and resentment. He didn't even deign to speak to me, merely using that gaze in an attempt to apply psychological pressure, forcing me to bow my head and admit fault just like before. Zhou Kiki casually scrolled through entertainment news on her phone while throwing a massive wide-eyed glare, chiming in with that peculiar sharpness unique to teenagers. Exactly, Mom. You're way too selfish. If my dad doesn't get the senior title, do you know how much less money our family takes in every month? How am I supposed to go to Beijing for intensive training later? Look at you right now, acting like a crazy woman. You don't deserve to be my mom at all. Looking at these three people before me whom I had once valued above my own life, and for whom I had sacrificed the first half of my existence, my heart failed to register even a single ripple. There was no anger, no grievance, only a sense of theatrical absurdity and absolute calm. The pain of my past life had already burned my heart into ashes. In this life, these verbal garbage piles could no longer wound me in the slightest. I bent down, unhurriedly untied my shoelaces, and switched into slippers. Then, with complete composure, I walked into the center of the living room. Drawing a legal document from my briefcase, one that had already been printed out and bore my signature, I placed it gently onto the coffee table. I indeed do not deserve it. I looked at Zhou Kiki, the corners of my mouth curling into a completely temperatureless smile. So, go find yourself another mother who deserves you. Zhou Yu had initially maintained his lofty, superior posture, but the moment his gaze swept over the 5 large characters heading that document divorce agreement, his face completely transformed. He bolted upright so violently that he knocked over the single sofa behind him. Staring at me in utter disbelief, he lost his color and shouted, Yuan, have you lost your mind? You want to divorce me? Yes, you read that right. Divorce. I slid my hands into my trench coat pockets, looking down at him as I enunciated clearly. Regarding the terms, I've laid them out plainly. Custody of our daughter, Zhou Kiki, goes to you after all. She admires you so much and despises me. This house was bought with joint funding from both our families when we got married. Now that it has appreciated, you can either cash out half to me based on market value, or I take all the family savings and leave the house to you guys. The property division is perfectly fair. Think it over and sign it as soon as possible. Yu acted as though he had just heard the greatest joke in the world. He scanned me up and down, a flash of panic flitting through his eyes, though it was quickly replaced by his habitual contempt and arrogance. He let out a cold laugh, hands on his hips, mocking me with that patronizing tone of a lecturer. Yuan, have you turned stupid from being a homeroom teacher at school? Using divorce to threaten me? Why don't you take a good look at yourself in the mirror? A woman pushing 40, her face covered in melasma. If you leave me, who else in this society is going to want you? Do you think you're still that 20-something virgin maiden you used to be? Once you're divorced, you're nothing but an unwanted, worn-out shoe second-hand goods. Listening to his highly insulting vocabulary, I suddenly felt an urge to laugh. How could I possibly step into the same river twice, in my past life? To maintain the integrity of this family and for the sake of providing a healthy growth environment for the child, I swallowed my pride and endured everything, only to end up dying a miserable death deep in the mountains. In this life, I had gained total clarity. Marriage and children had never been necessities for my life. For the remainder of my days, I wanted only my career, my dignity, and myself. Yu, save your psychological control. That tactic no longer works on me. I cut through his insults, staring at him icily. Think it over carefully, and give me your answer whenever you're ready. You had likely never witnessed such a resolute and unyielding side of me, unable to save face. He stiffened his neck and stated firmly, I don't agree, Yuan. Let me tell you, I will not grant this divorce. You want to turn me into a laughingstock at school. Not a chance. Oh really? You won't agree? I let out a cold laugh, taking half a step forward to lock eyes with him. Lowering my voice, I uttered each word deliberately in a tone only the two of us could hear. If you don't sign it, then tomorrow morning, I will take the evidence of your marital infidelity and long-term improper relationship with that female reporter, and hand it over completely to the discipline inspection group of the Bureau of Education and the school principal's office. I want every teacher, student, and parent in the school to see exactly what kind of wretched, despicable conduct this highly praised, sanctimonious teacher engages in behind closed doors. Yu's body froze instantly, the color draining entirely from his face until it was as white as paper. His lips trembled, a flash of terror passing through his eyes. What nonsense are you spouting? You're throwing slander and framing me. Whether I'm spouting nonsense, you know best in your heart. In truth, regarding that filthy business between him and Guyu, if it hadn't been for Zhou Keek's big mouth accidentally letting slip a few words in this life, I really wouldn't have connected the dots so quickly. After catching the scent, I kept my wits about me, taking advantage of the period when Yu went to the countryside for volunteer teaching and the home computer was left unattended. I used his old phone's verification code to log into his personal cloud network drive from a different device. The results were entirely expected. Inside an encrypted album lay a massive cache of intimate photos of him and Guyu, explicit chat logs, and even unspeakable videos taken inside budget hotels. I downloaded and backed up all of this evidence, saving it across several USB drives. They had met 3 years prior during an educational interview event. Guyu was a broadcast reporter for the city TV station back then, young, beautiful, fiercely ambitious, and well-versed in utilizing her feminine advantages to take shortcuts. As for Yu, who prided himself on possessing the integrity of a scholar but was actually entirely hypocritical, how could he possibly practice restraint when a young female reporter actively threw herself at him? Later on, their interactions grew progressively closer, and that squalid affair between a man and a woman naturally unfolded. This explained why, in my past life when I went missing and the entire family was concealing the news, Guyu was somehow able to secure the first-hand on-site information immediately. It explained why she could venture deep into the mountains to produce that sensationalized, province-wide in-depth report, the one that packaged Yu as an unwaveringly devoted husband while degrading me into a disgraced, crazed woman. The riddles of my past life were completely unraveled at this very moment. In fact, if I thought about it carefully, the signs had always been there. The faint scent of perfume on Zhou every time he used meetings as an excuse not to come home. His sudden frequent attention to his hairstyle and clothing. And those text messages Guyu sent every few days under the guise of academic exchange. It was only because I had been too foolish and naive in my past life, trusting him implicitly, that I failed to notice any of it. Zhou slumped despondently back onto the sofa, looking as though his spine had been instantly extracted. Keeping his head low, he stared fixedly at the floor, his fists clenched tightly, unable to utter a single syllable. He knew that once that evidence went public, he would not only lose his senior title, but even his teaching license would be stripped away, resulting in complete social death. My mother sat to the side, though she only half understood what was happening. Seeing her son-in-law falling into a disadvantage, she habitually jumped out to criticize me. Yuan. That's enough out of you. Is this how a wife behaves? Going so far as to report him to the Bureau of Education? Are you trying to drive Zhou to his grave? Even if Zhou wandered a little bit outside, wasn't that because you weren't attentive enough? If you were gentle every day and served him like a proper woman, how could he possibly do such a thing? Besides, what man under heaven doesn't stray? As long as his heart remains with the family, that's enough. Moreover, Zhou doesn't want to divorce you right now, which proves he still has you and this home in his heart. Why must you obsess over these old, dead matters? Do you really have to tear this family apart before you're satisfied? I turned my head, looking at my biological mother's harsh, entitled face. For a moment, I genuinely couldn't distinguish whether this was my mother or Zhou's mother. Ever since I could remember, she had always prioritized her son-in-law, constantly sucking up to Zhou in her speech. She looked down on me for being just an ordinary chemistry teacher, earning less and holding less prestige than Zhou. She had never considered my predicament within the marriage, let alone cared whether my dignity was being trampled upon. There was no despair in my heart, because it had died long ago. I felt only an endless sense of absurdity and farce. Zhou Kiki watched this scene unfold with cold detachment, showing not a shred of sympathy for her mother's betrayal. On the contrary, she was secretly gloating. She walked over to latch onto Zhou's arm, egging her father on. Dad. Forget it. Just divorce this unreasonable old woman. I think Auntie Gu is 1,000 times, 10,000 times better than her. Auntie Gu is gentle and beautiful. She even took me out for Western food last time and bought me a designer bag. She even told me she knows several big directors in the entertainment industry and can get me in to become a star in the future. Following this old woman, I'll never amount to anything my whole life. Looking at this daughter before me whom I had carried for 10 months and raised through every diaper change and feeding, and hearing her refer to the very woman who destroyed her family as Auntie Gu, even bursting with impatience to have her replace my position, I let go completely. I refused to spend another single second maneuvering around this hopeless bunch. Coldly dropping the divorce agreement, I turned around, walked into the bedroom, grabbed a simple suitcase I had already packed, and walked out the front door without once looking back. That night, I moved into the single faculty dormitory arranged by the school. Though it spanned barely a dozen square meters, the air inside was clean, entirely devoid of that rotting stench that made me want to vomit. Zhou's efficiency was higher than I anticipated, perhaps terrified every day like a thief that I would leak those photographs. He had someone deliver the divorce agreement fully signed by him to me a week later in the afternoon. A month later, the divorce cooling-off period concluded, and we successfully obtained our divorce certificates, according to the agreement. I liquidated and took all the savings from the family bank cards, totaling 360,000 yuan. Then, I cut ties completely with that residence filled with deceit and filth. After settling into the faculty dormitory, I severed all futile social connections from my past, channeling every ounce of my mental energy and time into the demanding work of leading the graduating senior class, waking up at 5:30 a.m. every morning and sleeping only after checking the dormitories at 11:00 p.m. grading assignments, dissecting national college entrance examination questions, and having heart-to-heart talks with students. This heavy workload failed to exhaust me. Instead, it allowed me to experience a long-lost sense of fulfillment and groundedness. Meanwhile, Zhou Yu's days were clearly far less pleasant. Because of his suspected concealment of a student's disappearance and delaying the golden window for rescue during his time in Qishan, even though Sun Yanyan ultimately returned safely without causing a fatal tragedy. His malicious behavior had already been flagged within the Bureau of Education. He was suspended from his duties to reflect for a period of time. His senior professional title went completely up in smoke, and even his eligibility for future awards was indefinitely revoked. 2 months later, I heard news of Zhou Yu once again, this time at the school's academic administration building. It happened to be right after the midterm examinations concluded. Having completed his suspension period and returned to school, Zhou Yu discovered he had been removed from core teaching positions and reassigned to the back-office archives to manage idle records. Unable to accept this massive downfall, he actually threw a massive tantrum inside the office of the academic affairs director, slamming the desk and accusing the director of intentionally targeting him out of personal enmity. The two of them engaged in a ferocious, hysterical shouting match inside the office, their voices echoing wildly and attracting dozens of teachers and passing students throughout the building to spectate. The academic affairs director's face turned iron green, shaking with rage as he slammed an official document onto the desk. Zhou Yu, stop acting like a mad dog biting everyone in sight. This reassignment is an official directive issued by the Bureau of Education. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. It was you who displayed a complete lack of professional ethics and refused to save a life during the volunteer teaching. The school's decision not to expel you is already leaving you with the last shred of dignity. Zhou Yu's hair was a disheveled mess, his eyes bloodshot and filled with a wild, vicious frenzy. He scanned the surrounding crowd maniacally, until finally, that gaze steeped in venom locked firmly onto me as I stood on the outer perimeter of the corridor. Is it you? Looking as though he had found an outlet for his rage, Zhou Yu suddenly lunged through the crowd, charging toward me like an enraged wild beast. Yuan, you're the one behind this, aren't you? You went to the Bureau of Education to report me, didn't you? Was it you, you bitch? He burst from the crowd, his hands curved like talons, his eyes wide with a murderous intent to strangle my neck. I had been prepared all along. The moment he lunged forward, I calmly stepped to the side. Due to his massive momentum, Zhou Yu failed to brake in time, crashing violently against the iron door of a nearby fire hydrant with a muffled, heavy thud. Seeing this, several young male teachers nearby rushed forward to pin him down securely. Unable to break free, Zhou Yu began spitting and cursing at me like a lunatic. Yuan, you malicious woman. You forced me into a divorce. You plundered my savings. And now you want to sabotage my job and ruin my entire life. Where on earth did I wrong you? For you to be this ruthless, driving me to absolute ruin. I watched his pathetic, disheveled state with cold eyes, my tone flat without a single ripple. Zhou Yu, it wasn't me. You overestimate your weight in my heart. You're overthinking. Zhou Yu pounded the nearby desk furiously, his knuckles split open and dripping with blood as he roared hysterically. If it wasn't you, who else could it be? Aside from a crazy woman who hates me to the bone like you, who else would write a joint whistleblower letter to the Bureau of Education? Who else would contact the media? It was me. Suddenly, from behind the gathered crowd, a firm, clear, and unshrinking young female voice rang out. Everyone turned their heads to look. The crowd automatically parted to form a path. Sun Yanyan appeared at the end of the corridor at some unknown point. She wore a slightly faded denim jacket, and though her face, which was newly recovered from a major illness, still bore a trace of lingering fragility and paleness, her gaze had never been as bright, resolute, and filled with power as it was now. Step by step, Sun Yanyan walked up to Zhou Yu, looking down at the senior home she had once respected but who had nearly caused her death. Teacher Zhou, I was the one who wrote the whistleblower letter to the Bureau of Education, and I was the one who took the initiative to contact the media. Staring straight into Zhou Yu's stunned eyes, Sun Yanyan enunciated each word. Teacher Zhou, back in Qishan, you knew perfectly well that I had gone missing. You knew perfectly well that I was likely facing danger. But for the sake of your own volunteer teaching bonus points for that illusory senior title of yours, you chose to lie to the police. You chose to suppress the news. And you chose not to report it immediately. For your own selfish gains, you nearly let me die completely inside that devouring mountain, ensuring I would never return. I believe it is absolutely necessary for every teacher and student in this school, the entire Bureau of Education, and indeed the whole of society to see your true colors. Therefore, I didn't just write a whistleblower letter. I also accepted an interview with a legal program under my real name, Zhou Yu. All of this is your own doing. It has absolutely nothing to do with Sister Yuan. Zhou Yu was utterly stupefied. He had likely never imagined in his wildest dreams that Sun Yanyan's intern teacher, who usually blushed just from speaking loudly in the office and appeared weak and easily bullied, had completely emerged from her previous trauma. Possessing the immense courage to stand beneath the sunlight and personally rip open her own scars before the public in the spotlights to address this matter. Staring at his former lover's signed expose article, Zhou Yu suffered a massive psychological shock. In his dazed state, he took a false step, tumbling down the stairwell and breaking his leg, leading to an indefinite suspension from his duties by the school. 2 weeks later, a completely drenched Zhou Kiki intercepted me in tears beneath the dormitory building, begging me to take her back home. Due to Zhou Yu's scandal, she had been dismissed from her art class, and at home, she had to endure the physical and verbal abuse of her maternal grandmother. I coldly pried away her hands, which were gripping my pant legs with a death lock. When the divorce happened, you chose your father yourself. She demanded hysterically to know why I refused to care for her. I let out a cold laugh. Go find your auntie Gu. Zhou Kiki's face turned stark white as she cried out that Gu had become the deputy director of the news department and had ordered security to throw her out long ago. Panic-stricken, she asked if I truly didn't want her anymore, remembering how in my past life, after I had escaped with my life, she deemed me filthy and kicked me aside to switch to calling someone else mom. My heart turned into solid ice. You were the one who didn't want me first. I arranged for the child support payments to be deposited into her card monthly. As for maternal love, she would never receive another shred of it. Subsequently, my mother called, weeping that Zhou Yu was hospitalized with a broken leg and suffering a psychological breakdown, attempting to emotionally blackmail me into a remarriage. She then drifted into her decades-old grievances regarding favoring sons over daughters and the suffering she had endured. I hung up coldly and blocked her number, shedding this burden that I had carried for over 30 years. My heart finally welcomed absolute peace. I didn't deny it. Gu Yu was a blade, and in this life, I held the hilt. As for Sun Yanyan, after her recovery, she stepped back onto the lecture podium. She had developed a touch more detachment and a stronger sense of boundaries, learning how to protect herself within a complex society. On the eve of the winter break, Zhou Yu walked with a limp to the school to process his resignation. Catching sight of me, his eyes looked hollow as he asked, "Do you really hate me that much?" "I don't hate you, because hating someone requires energy, and he wasn't worth it." Watching his limping, retreating silhouette, the image of him 15 years ago, wearing a white shirt and proposing to me, surfaced in my mind. I reached into my bag and pulled out that cheap, plain band wedding ring that had trapped me in a 15-year marriage, throwing it with all my might into the artificial lake. The ring flashed with a faint glint beneath the sunlight before plunging into the water with a sharp splash, disappearing entirely into the depths. Turning around, I took massive strides forward, racing toward a future that belonged entirely to me.